Hello everybody, and welcome. This is the third class of the first day of the Embodied Parenting 2019 Embodied Parenting online course. And I am really pleased to introduce you to Dr. Lori Baudino. Dr. Lori is joining us from Los Angeles today. She is a licensed clinical psychologist, board-certified dance movement therapist, and a mum of two, so she's got a lot of strings to her bow. She practices privately in Los Angeles and throughout California, specializing with children, families, educators to support the whole child, mind, body, and spirit. Dr. Baudino is the National Clinical Spokesperson for the Andrea Rizzo Foundation, offering therapeutic support to children with cancer and special needs in pediatric hospital settings. And she's on the administrative board of directors for American Dance Movement, supporting movement and dance for health and education for all. So welcome to you all, and welcome Dr. Baudino, and over to you.
All right, thank you for having me. I can see 3 of us up there, and I imagine there's more out there. So I just recommend that as I'm talking, please feel free to either type in questions or, chime in. I want to make this as interactive as possible. As most of you may be parents yourselves, or you are working with children, you know that working together, that work is very spontaneous. So I'd like this to feel the same way, that there's no way of messing up, but we make this really engaging together. I have some notes in front of me, so you might see me looking down, but I just want to make sure to cover it all. So today, I titled it Body Knowledge, How to Truly Communicate with Children While Valuing Yourself. And body knowledge is something that, in this field as a psychologist and as a dance movement therapist, I often get asked since the beginning of coming into this work of like, what is, dance movement therapy, and how does movement have anything to do with psychology, and how does it have anything to do with health? And what in the world would that have anything to do with parenting? So there's these endless questions. And to me, it's always been kind of like this no-brainer. This idea that, of course, movement and the body is how we experience life and how we have relationships and how we connect to one another. So what better way than to support children through the body? But it also comes from the work. I've also realized when I'm working with parents that so often there's these incredible parenting books out there, a lot of which are colleagues of mine who I value greatly. And a lot of it is information about like what to think, how to think differently. What do we do with triggers when they come up? And it's a lot of thinking, like telling yourself it's not personal, or learning words, and all of that is very important. What I want to kind of dive into today is how important the body is and movement is as an extra lens in how you're parenting and how you're working with children. So back to this word body knowledge. I define it for my work as our awareness of our body movements and how our movements impact our experiences within our internal world. So we have this introception, what's happening inside the body, our external world in terms of our relationships to other people, as well as our environment, how we perceive our senses. And so in order to have this body knowledge, that gives us information that we can then use every time we have interactions with others. So there are many areas that I look at when I'm working with children, and we'll see how much time we have to dive into all of them. But some of them are, I'm always looking at sensory profile. So how does our child perceive their environment and integrate or modulate all the senses that are happening outside of them and internally in order to organize themselves, like our brain's there to help organize our system so that we can learn and interact. And oftentimes being in the field, there's this phrase of like neuro differences, like a child who has challenges or unique qualities about them. We tend to look at sensory profiles, but even our neurotypical children, those children that don't necessarily get called out from school as anything's going on, or the pediatrician might not notice anything, those kids also have sensory profiles. So I really advocate for knowing all of our kids' profiles. I know as a parent myself, when my children came into the world, I was so interested to see what's Aiden's profile, what's Lila's profile. And it didn't mean there had to be something wrong or different about them. I mean, every kid has something different and unique about them, but it was just about how to understand them. So we can talk about that more, but I'll keep going. I also find it really valuable to understand how our child soothes themselves. So we tend to think there's a one size fits all to soothing, and that we're looking at, like, we want to get our children to fall asleep, or to calm down, to kind of be calm and alert in this kind of, I use zones of regulation, so kind of in this green zone. But there are so many ways to soothe. I know I'll just use my children today as examples because it's a little safer than thinking about clients. My own children, you know, my daughter would need to be revved up before calming down. She needed a lot of tactile, a lot of input to her body. That's how she organized. My son, for instance, needed a lot of auditory, listening, ways of soothing. And then what I could do is support them to have a full range of ways to soothe. But I needed to know first how they soothed. The other things I explore are temperament. So I think it's an incredible tool that's been around like since the 50s, and it still it still holds very true. So understanding your child's temperament, how they came into this world. Are they the willful child that does really well with being the leader and knowing what's expected of them? Are they easygoing kid that kind of goes with the flow, but yet we also need to kind of give them some extra space to have a choice, to have an opinion, because they tend to be so easygoing. Or they, you know, slow to warm, the kid who just kind of watches and observes before jumping in, which might help them with being cautious, but we also want to support them to know when to lean in a little bit and when to kind of play with that gray area. So I also look at parenting styles. So we have, you know, what kind of parenting style, and I, you know, of course, we tend to favor, just research-wise, is really being that parent that has clear and consistent boundaries and limits while supporting meaningful learning. So everything we're doing makes sense for our child. It's not just because mommy said so, but because it's the best interest of their child and they understand why. And last but not least, today, we're talking about movement profile. So you can see there's lots of layers to this, but what's exciting is that as you're working with children and as you're being a parent, these things become really instinctual. And, you know, I was actually listening with my son about physics, and something that the physicist was saying, my son's only in third grade, but he was interested in Newton's law, and they were saying physics is intuitive. It's just a given. Like you can watch something roll and know when it stops, right? These are just things that are instinctual, they're intuitive. And to me, this kind of work should be as well. And the way it's intuitive is because it's in our body. And so, again, as you're looking at all those different layers that I just kind of whizzed by, you're seeing that it starts to come quite easily. So movement profile, when you're able to know your child's movement profile and your own, and I really want to emphasize today our own movement profile, we tend to look at children as like, how can we, you know, there's sometimes a fix-it approach, and we don't want a fix-it approach. We want a engaging approach. We want a connection approach. We want to see that there's room for learning, and it's something there's always room for learning. It's not like a finite endpoint that we're trying to get to with our children. And that comes from not just looking at our children, but looking at ourselves. So what's our movement profile? Especially when you're met with challenges, but even more so when you notice, like, what's that flow point when things just seem easy, things are going so well between you and your child. What qualities do you observe in your child? So what I mean by qualities, and some of you out there might know in the movement world, Rudolf Laban created an analysis. He created a writing, an analysis, an interpretation of movement. And there are books about this, there are research about this. The parts that I take from it is just that I apply it in how I work with children, how I look at how a child engages in their world. And what it comes down to is some 3 areas. And Laban talks about weight, space, and time. And the idea of understanding weight, space, and time allows me to have a lens where I can see where the child's preferences are and how they interact with their world. I can also see differentiation between parent and child. So for example, if a child is moving in time very slow or sustained, these are the polarities of time, is slow and fast. If the child's moving quite sustained and the parent's moving really fast, then we have a challenge point. And so even just looking at it in terms of those qualities can give us a lot of information. Let me just check what else I have to tell you about Laban. So what else happens is then when you respond, when you respond from a place of understanding the movement, and I'm going to go into that more, you become aware in your body of like your choices that you're making. And all of a sudden, it sends a message to your brain that then you can kind of climb. We say this lower limbic system, we climb to the upstairs of our brain, and we're able to use that higher functioning, integration, and executive functioning. So it becomes less personal. One of the ways that we get out of that stress response is to use our bodies. And so we need to acknowledge that piece first. We need to understand what's happening in our body. How are we doing so far? Yeah? Okay. So for today, I want to spend some time thinking about timing. Timing has become a really critical piece to what I observe as the necessary component in relationships. I said that Laban, the movement terms, talks about timing. Time meaning fast and slow. And I'll expand it even further as timing as a reference point of what triggers us. I know we're all in different countries right now and coming together, but out here in America, and maybe it's similar out there, you guys can nod your head or let me know, there is a big need to get everything done fast as possible and as quick as you can, and when the one person says it to be done. There's like a real need for things to be met certain ways, right? And that's a real source of contention with kids, because we want the child to get something done fast, and we think we told them, so that means they should do it in a snap, and the kid's timing might be different. We have arguments between family members, teachers, educators, and there could be many reasons why these challenges come up, right? There could be many emotional layers underneath. But if we could just simplify it for the sake of today, and just to kind of bring this into your toolkit and notice that timing is that critical component that could make and potentially change the disrupt, which is hopefully the goal. So I've seen this with teachers. I've seen this where a teacher or administration is looking at a child and saying they're oppositional defiant. They won't do anything they're told. They're looking at expelling them or kicking them out of school at a preschool, kindergarten level. And when I watched and observed the child, now, yes, there may be other therapeutic needs in there, but I saw that the child moved indulgently on the playground, doing her own thing in time, really enjoying and exploring. And then the teacher came very fast and had this quick demand, and most of the kids in the class followed suit and sat down and did what they were expected. This child was seen as defiant because she wasn't moving at the same speed. And so we just played with the idea of, what if we took away all the labels, all the stigma, and just looked at timing? What if instead of directing this child to move fast, the teacher joined at a more slower pace, and then together they moved in together? And then if she faded that out, where she wasn't next to the child, but could kind of use either a sing-songy voice or gestures with her body to match the child, and all of a sudden they come in. And now we're changing the dynamics of this child not being defiant, but just based on timing, just a simple thing. I've seen the same example happen with a child getting outside, getting something done in the house. Maybe they spill something and the parent wants them to pick it up. The parent wants it done right away. The child freezes up and doesn't respond as fast. Now there's a new argument of, not only did I spill, but now my parent's mad at me, and now we're all upset and nothing's being done. No timing is being met. So then slowing down, helping the child realize there's, like, when you're ready, you may clean that up, This expectation can still be there, but the timing gets altered. Let me just look again. I just wanted to kind of additionally say with that is that it's a lot to do timing with that stress response. So if we know that stress comes up, or the response for survival, of safety, of adaptive skills, a child is just having adaptive responses to their environment. It's not like a personal vendetta against anyone. So if they are responding in an adaptive way to organize themselves, then we want to make sure that's as safe as possible. And that starts with helping them organize themselves, which means that we have to acknowledge that timing. And so sometimes I get mad as I'm saying this out loud. I'm hearing parents in my mind telling me, oh, but isn't that enabling them? What if they, then we're always doing it their way, and we're always having to slow down. That's not right. That's not okay. And so ultimately the goal can be that we want to help the child get faster in responses and be compliant. That's absolutely possible, but we have to start somewhere. And so I just want you to hear that as a lens of timing. The other area is space and boundaries. This is another area that can be intuitive, but we miss the awareness of how space and boundaries affect our relationships and learning. How our child uses space to get needs met or to separate. This is a fun subject to explore. It's how our child uses space to get needs met. So what triggers you with space? So oftentimes parents will say, like, when my child's all on top of me, or when there's a huge mess, or there's a lot of noise, there's this space, their own personal space has been invaded. Or they might notice that their sensory system's been kind of that, there's a closeness in their proximity. So we want to look at understanding your own boundaries and your own space. Like, how do you find that place within your relationship, within your interactions with your child? Some examples are a child not eating her food on the plate, and the child might push the food away. And they're clearly saying, I need some space. I need a moment. A parent sees a big mess and they feel like, I need to leave this room. I need to take some space. And sometimes that's a strategy, right? We hear parents say, like, if you're about to scream or be your worst parent, like, go take a, leave the room or step back. So that's certainly a safer adaptive response than screaming. But also I want to see, how can we get that space within the interaction before you have to leave? Like, how can you be with the child and within yourself, take that space internally in your body? Or maybe the visual of all the mess is bothering you, so you direct it to a certain area. So maybe rather than the space being everywhere there's a mess, maybe there's one specific spot that can get messy, right? Maybe the noise is too overwhelming, but how can you get space within in terms of directing it to a different spot? So direction, space talks about in Laban terms, indirect and direct. So direct meaning from one point to another, indirect meaning to take in all the space around you, like kind of popping bubbles, or what a teacher needs to do in order to see all the class. This can be used in our interactions with our kids. The other thing to say about this is, if a child is physically showing in their body space, like they're pushing their food away or they're moving their body away when you're asking them to come towards you, if we acknowledge it as just that, it's not an absolute no response. It's not, we tend to take these words very literal. I know that we say kids that are, I don't know, in their younger ages, they're like literal police. They call us out when we are not exactly correct on our words. But parents as well, and educators as well, can be very literal. We hear a child say something like no, and we immediately like, oh, he's being defiant, or she's not going to do it. And so we want to take some space in that and wait and see that they might be just saying not right now. That's a lot more words. That's a lot harder to grasp and say, yeah. Yeah, we can.
Yeah, you can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to, to offer up another example like that, which I think can highlight it, that how often our children are trying to regulate themselves through space, through taking that space, and we miss those cues. And sometimes we don't only miss the cues, we also maybe punish those cues as well. So I'm thinking of my son, who would find being in a physical education class very, very hard, very difficult. And he would often leave and take himself out the room and just get out. And, the teachers would do what they want to keep bringing him back, and, would see this more as a kind of a disciplined thing that he needed to get back into the classroom. And they were really struggling to do that, because of course then he'd get back into the room and then he would escalate. And when I just asked him, so what is it? Why do you feel the need to leave the room? And he said it's because actually, if I don't leave the room, I'm going to get to the point where I'm going to hurt somebody. So he's doing absolutely the right thing to be able to support himself and everybody else within the room to be safe. So that wasn't recognized. And, he was then being brought back into a place which then escalated the situation. And that was simply resolved by giving him freedom and giving him that possibility to trust. Because they say, well, if he goes out, then he might disappear. So I said, well, just trust that he won't, because mostly our children want to be in connection with each other. So, trust that is something that he's going to want to do. And they were quite surprised, actually, that when they gave him that freedom, gave him that possibility, he would take 2 minutes, he'd just go into a classroom with someone else, then he would choose himself to come back, and then he was able to regulate that. So,
well, thank you. I mean, what you're touching upon is so much about our fear response, and it really comes from a good place. I feel like as educators or health practitioners, doctors, parents, we're coming from a good place. This fear comes up in us of like, what if this is always like this? We have to, we must teach them the correct way right this moment, right now. And like what you're saying, there is more space to lean into it and notice like it is just a moment in time. And of course you can have goals towards getting the child back in. It's not to say that that's not a fine goal to have. But like you mentioned, just acknowledging that ability that the child's having an adaptive response. Their brain is trying to organize at all costs. Their body's trying to organize at all costs. So they have to do that. We don't know what it's like in their own bodies, in their brains. So like you're saying, just really kind of letting the fear go away and giving some space around it. I was going to say that the example that you're saying as well, if I said to a child, if they say no to me and I say, oh, you need a moment, you're setting a boundary and physically taking space for the food. That would be the example. Like they push it away. Like, okay, you're letting me know, like not now. Now when you're ready, find a way to finish the breakfast so your belly's satisfied. That's for them to decide, right? When you're ready, finish the food so that your belly's satisfied. Then they get to feel, oh, I'm in control. I'd like to satisfy my belly. Okay. And they might take 5 bites, they might take 2 bites. And again, you could work up to, hey, I think diet-wise or the child's nutrition or sensory needs or all other components we talked about, maybe they need more food intake. So we might have to play with that on a diet, on a nutritional side. But in terms of having a battle, that space and boundary allows the child to see, and I'm going to talk about this in a moment, that you're on their team. That it's not them fighting against the food and fighting you. There's only one fight, them and the food, and they can decide that there's no fight anymore and they can take it in. Or like your example, it's just them in the space of the classroom, and when they need to take a break, they can go out, and when they're ready, they come back in. So you can decide. The other part to this of knowing space and boundaries is setting up those baskets. There are not as much talk. I know they're out there, but sometimes they talk about how parents should sit down and have like these agreements and contracts for their house, and we don't set enough time to really decide like how to have a family, as much as we do for like our jobs or buying a car, those kind of things. But you know, it is a chance, thinking of boundaries in space, of like, what are those areas that are like the musts, the agreements in the family that have to take place, and so then everyone does them. Everyone brushes teeth, for example. Everyone, you know, eats at mealtime, whatever that is. What's the baskets that can change sometimes? We would like everyone to make their beds, but sometimes the bed doesn't have to be made, but at least acknowledge, oh, I didn't have time to do it today, Mom, that kind of thing. A lot of it comes with acknowledging that the child recognizes that they know that thing that would be nice if it was done, but it just didn't happen today. To me, the respect and acknowledgement is a lot more important than whether they did it or not. These are skills they can have for the rest of their life. And they most likely won't go off to college or get married with a messy bed that would really impact their relationships or make them fail out of school or not get married or whatever, or not become whatever scientist they want to be. So we want to just instill that space and boundaries can be a physical space, but it also can be just this ability to see these baskets of what's the most important, what's those absolute agreements, what's that middle box, and what's the no's, what's the things that we've been expecting to be done all this time, but maybe we can let that go for now, and we can revisit it in a month, in a year, in 5 years, and that we have some time. So the next piece to this space and boundaries is about using affect and gestures. So not just realizing how many times do I set a boundary in a space by using my words and like saying something, but am I using gestures? Am I creating opportunities for using facial expressions so that our children are reading our cues? And that to me is really important, because it's something you're helping your child be able to read cues across the environment. So they're not just waiting for you to tell them what to do, but they might just notice your like head turn, or you rubbing your belly, saying, kind of hungry, and then everyone's going to eat. So really acknowledging that the body is a way to really kind of cement in, or kind of solidify your message to them. So just thinking about the body. All right, so moving on, we will talk about how we use our body with our relationships and learning. I have written down tracing movements and sensations, being, not assuming. This is when you are supporting a child to be empathic. This is a big topic in parenting, a big topic at schools, really wanting to make sure the child have empathy. But what we know is that the idea of having a feeling that's separate from yourself, so like I'm having a feeling, I'm a child, and that child has a different feeling, that's kind of a information in my mind, but I don't really, as a child, understand that in my body. So it might look like something like this. If I'm angry and I have my fist tight and my shoulders up and I'm like this, then I'm angry, and so there's anger. But if I notice that in my peer, their body's folded over and they're crying, I might start to notice, there's a difference. I don't know what they feel like because I only feel anger, but I can see that it looks different. I might even try it on and kind of notice, that kind of reminds me of the time where I was crying too, if I'm the child. And all of a sudden, we start to have more empathy. It becomes less of a word and more of an experience. So this also starts, we talk in the psychology world about empathy and relationships starting with self-compassion. So if the child doesn't know themselves, if the parent doesn't know themselves, it'd be really hard to be empathic to somebody else. And so one of the ways I'd like to explore this today, and we can try to do this, you all have to give me feedback because I know we're on a computer, I call them our sensory superpowers. So our sensory superpowers is a fun way to let children know that they have powers. What kid doesn't want superpowers, right? And we all have them. So sensory superpowers is that we have these senses, these abilities to see and hear and smell and taste and touch. And we also have this sixth sense of like this awareness of like, I know where my mom's car is, even though I can't see it, I can't feel it, I can't hear it, but I know where it is, that kind of knowing feeling, right? We have also this other sense inside of us, like I know when I have this gut feeling in my belly, whether I should do something or not, or I kind of feel uncomfortable, or I feel really hot or cold, right? So we have all these senses that kids can use. And I have to say, my little side note is I'm a huge advocate. I've talked to doctors at hospitals. There's often this idea of distracting a child. So a child has a big feeling, they have pain, and let's distract them. And I know for me, dance movement therapy, that's often what I get told, like, oh, you're here to distract them. And I come back right away and say to them, there's no distracting here. It's only empowering them. I'm giving them options to notice other sensations. So if they're feeling pain, if they want to stay feeling pain, we can continue to feel pain. But if they want to switch to a different sensation, there are other options. They could look at what they're seeing around the room. They could focus on what they're hearing. They might even feel a different part of their body that's not in pain. There are a lot of options. And then they might be able to access that when they're ready to, and if they want to. And it's amazing how many times I've been met, as you mentioned at the beginning, I work at hospitals. I've been met with children that are in so much pain that they never noticed there were any noises going on in the room. They only focused on their pain. And maybe they were distracted, play a video game, or maybe they were distracted to, talk to someone, but they still only felt pain. But then if I acknowledge to them, hey, you have superpowers, and we could play with them a little bit, all of a sudden they're like, I never knew that. I never even was aware of my other choices. So it is so instinctual, but we all forget it. This is, oftentimes we say a feeling, we have to like name it. It's okay to help our children with language of like, what's that feeling? Oh, that looks, these items together kind of equals sadness. But I would rather just notice what they're doing in their bodies and say to them, I'm seeing your shoulders bent over, I'm seeing tears, and let them decide if they're saying, yes, mommy, I'm sad, or yes, Dr. Baudino, I don't feel well, versus me saying, you look sad, because maybe there's something else going on. And then also when I'm noticing and just saying to them, your body's doing this, I just see this, ultimately the child will change it, will shift it, or they might just stay right there and go, yes, I am. And that acknowledgement of that's their truth, that's how they are in their body, they feel like, wow, I've finally been seen. You're actually like letting me be me and not trying to change it or tell me that I have to be different. So let's play a little bit with sensory superpowers. We don't get to label, so the child's not lazy or difficult or challenges. We get to just say what they are. So where you are in your offices, homes, spaces, cars, just for a moment, you may shut your eyes if you'd like. Just kind of shift in your seat. Notice if you want to get comfortable. And let's play with the idea of noticing any sounds. If you want, those of you that I can see, you can put your hands up. I apologize, I'm having you look at me for a second. You can put your hands up and kind of note how many sounds you hear, and we'll try to do like 5 of them. But you can keep your eyes shut, just so we get a sense of if you're aware of different sounds. I will be quiet while we're doing this, but just notice if you can differentiate different sounds. All right, so on your own time, opening your eyes. You're welcome to chime in if you want to share what sounds you heard. I know for me, I'm near the Los Angeles airport, so I heard airplanes. I heard a little clock that I never even knew was in this room, but it's somewhere. I noticed this little sharp sound of the lights probably, or the air. Yeah. So you start to notice different, very, very faint and different sounds. I also noticed that I tried, because I've done this a lot, I tried to focus on, can I even hear my breath? I'm hearing your message. Yeah, only heard yeah, thank you so much. cat purring. Yep. The house creaking. Yeah. Yeah. So even that awareness, imagine that when you're triggered by your child or you're in a moment, if you could kind of activate that sense of sound and be present to like the kind of a Buddhist philosophy that the space within the sound, right? The moments where there's no sound, which makes their sound if there wasn't any space. Tummy grumbling, thank you. Oh yeah, and child breathing, how beautiful. So this can be so simple, and it can be something you do with your child, like actually in the car after school. You could do it before bed. Kids love to kind of race and see how many numbers they can come up with. Yeah. So just for a second, let's just do one more. I know our time's flying away. Let's do the sense of touch. Touch can be temperature, hot, cold. It could be soft, it could be hard, it could be sharp. Think about different textures on your body. It could be inside your body. And you can close your eyes if you want, or just, sitting in your space. And when you're ready, you can maybe write one down. We won't take too long on it, but what sensory feeling of touch is kind of charged right now? What's the pain you're aware of the most? What are you paying attention to the most? And I'm just gonna hear if any of you have any responses. I know for me, I'm very aware right now that there's certain parts of my body that feel warm and other parts that feel cooler. Warm's getting hard. The chair, yeah, hands touching. Yeah, you can see if they're clammy. It's amazing that there can be pain and hot fever. Oh, I hope that you feel okay, feeling that you're aware of that sensation, right? Yeah. So imagine that all day long, our children maybe aren't even attuned to what they're feeling in their body, that sense of touch. And there might be so many things going on for any of them at any given time. And in addition to that, they're supposed to be answering questions and writing math or reading or answering their friends or deciding who to play with or digesting their food. There's so many things going on. So our sensory superpowers is a beautiful way to connect to our child, to connect to ourselves. And also just to kind of get away from that assuming that we know what's going on, but kind of really leaning into knowing more about what's possibly going on in that body and how much control you actually have over it. So I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna talk about mood as non-judgmental movement, not a mistake, okay? So I was rereading Eckhart Tolle's work, Power of Now, and I'm not gonna say it as beautiful as he does, but just this idea that judgment comes when we are judging someone based on their unconscious. We're basically assuming the way they're acting is them, and we don't like it. And we'd like it to stop. And the idea is that if we can take away that judgment and realize it's not on purpose, it's not intentional, it might be a lack of awareness, we can still ask them to not do it or make a plan to work on this together. But getting upset and judging something, judging a mood, that the way you're acting is bothering me, makes it really personal, and it doesn't give it much room to change or to get resolved. So if we look at a mood as movement, I have found that it becomes less personal. So I love a lot of parenting philosophies, parenting coaching courses talk about saying it's not personal, or saying some mantra to yourself. But I want to take it a step further and again go back to this idea of looking at the child's body. So if a child's showing a mood, it is just movement. It's a pouting of the face, it's grabbing their arms, it's stomping their feet, it is crying, it is hiding, it is folding over. If you can become experts in seeing that their mood is just movement, it becomes so not personal. It actually becomes quite endearing or cute. We can start to enjoy them. Wouldn't it be amazing if you had your own mood and someone didn't judge you for it? They just said, oh, like you're pouting your lips, or you're having fists, and okay, that's what you're doing. And then we might go into it and talk about it more, but it doesn't mean that we're affecting that person. We've changed their day or ruined their moment. Yeah. So oftentimes I've said this to my own children, to my husband, to myself. You know, my daughter might be upset and I'll be saying she's ruining the day or ruining the mood, you know, changing everyone's mood. But if that doesn't make it better, right? She just ends up getting more upset. I get more upset and nothing gets resolved. Versus if I look at her and I go, oh, she's just in this movement pace, I can either stay and join her in it, and we can both get really angry about the day and like, oh, things didn't go our way, and like one thing after another is not working out today. It's raining and our friend canceled on us and everything's going wrong and everything's bad. Or I can let her know, I think we're gonna flip upside down and do something very silly and change that mood, right? But it's, again, it's not my goal to change the feeling. It's just about changing the body posture, and then she gets to decide what's going to happen. This is kind of goes into being a teammate with your child. So here's the analogy. The analogy is, I'm going to say this in so many different ways, but the same story. This happened to me last night. But so the idea is that you just took your child to the park, and you're having an amazing time at the park. Your child gets to play. You've set up the whole thing. You changed your work around to be there. Everything's going really well. And now it's time to leave. You're leaving the park. And as you start to walk home, the child starts to get, you know, contrary. They start kind of folding over. They start whining. They start saying, I don't want to leave. They start saying, I can't walk anymore. And all this frustration happens. Typically, the parent's response is, from what I've heard from parents and myself being a parent, is like we feel this feeling of like, how disrespectful are you, little child? How dare you do this to me? I just took you to the park. All I need to do is get us home. I have 15 other things we need to do when we get home. So our own fears come up, our own frustrations come up, and all of a sudden, this is the dynamic. The child is upset about the walk, the hill that's really high, and upset about the transition from leaving the park. And now there also is a fight between them and the road, them and the park time, and them and you. So now there's 3 things to fight with, 3 upsets, and they're all by themselves. And that's really hard. We know with social learning theory, tasks get easier when we're joining together, right? So like research, like if they showed someone a cliff all by themselves and they said, you know, rate how steep that is, they would rate it as a 10, like the steepest mountain ever. But if they were with someone rating it, they would say, oh, I think it's about 5 or 6. Like we could do that, right? So it changes with somebody. So we want to find a way to be a team. Same thing, this comes up a lot recently and ongoing, of like food, right? Like my child won't eat their food, and then the parents yelling at them, eat, and the child saying, no, I don't like this. And so the child's fighting with their food and the parent, and everybody's on their own team. And if anything, maybe the parent and the food are on one team against the child. And we want to instead flip that and say, oh man, those eggs, are you going to get them? How dare they? And like, are you going to, you know, stab the eggs and eat them? Are you going to sweep them up? What are you going to do to get them? I want to have some too. Like, you know, so how can we move with them and join the same team? I did this, like I said, last night. My son, after a long day, I felt like everything went well for him. He got home and all he kept saying was, I wish I had had more time to watch a movie. Didn't get to watch a movie. And I felt inside of me like, I felt rage. I felt like disrespected. I felt underappreciated. Like, how could that happen? We just had such a great day and now you're going to ask for something else. But instead, I took a breath. I don't always do this. I'm not always doing the right, you know, I make my mistakes and have to repair them. But I was able to respond in a way of acknowledging that you wish this. I also wish I had more time to play outside. I also wish, and we got to kind of have a dance. I call it a dance, a conversation dance of moving back and forth and thinking about all the things that we were disappointed in. But I have to say, what I add in is not just verbal, but I'm using my whole body like, oh man, I didn't get to do this. And he's looking at me like, whoa, like she's really showing me what her feelings were. And he's showing his. And all of a sudden he looked over at me and said, I love you, Mom. And we started reading a book together. So it's that idea of joining the same team. All right, so 15 minutes. I want to be able to make sure let me ask you all. We can go into an experiential, or we can open up for conversation, questions. How do you all feel? Any feedback? All right. Well, I'll keep going, and then just let me know when we want to have some questions or anything.
I think one short experiential I think would be really good if we can fit that in.
Okay.
We need to leave about 10 minutes because we need a few minutes at the end just to do some housekeeping. But there's a little short experiential, and also if anyone's got any questions that they want to type in or ask at the end, and there's also a chance to ask on the Facebook page as well. So. Is that all right with everybody? You can put your thumbs up. Is that okay?
Yeah. I appreciate. I'm seeing some comments being put in. So let's see if this experiential kind of gets you a little closer. So the idea is I use the acronym DANCE, DANCE. I'm so excited that it works. The word dance, and we know that integration, in order to have health and wellness connection, is differentiated parts that link together are integration. So we have different parts of our body and they all work separately, but all together it becomes this functioning person, right? So the D is for differentiate. All right, so I'm gonna say this as we go, but right there, right where you are, you're gonna just start by acknowledging little movements. So pick a body part and just kind of pay attention to how you want to move. Separate little parts, seeing how your fingers move, maybe your feet are moving, maybe it's your neck, right? And none of this has to be prescribed. It's not something that we have to make our child do, or that, that has to have a certain outcome. It's just bringing a lens to you all to be aware of your body. So the D is for differentiating. So imagine that you notice your child and how their subtle movements are. What parts of their body are moving and how they're moving. I'm looking down because I'm moving my feet. Okay. And then as you're noticing the individual movements, the differentiated movements, you're going to attach them together. All right. So you're going to attach them together by moving the same way. Either if you had a child with you, you'd be moving the same way as the child. So you might try on, you had these separate movements from your child, but now you're going to move the same as them. So that's the attach. A is for attaching. In neuroscience, they say linking. We're going to say attach for the A. So you're going to attach those movements together. So imagine you had your head and if this was personally for you as a parent, and you notice that you were individually moving this tension in your shoulders, all of a sudden you'd attach it to the rest of your body and everything would start to move together. Okay. Again, if you had a child with you, you would be, as a teacher or as a parent, you would be acknowledging them. So you might have a goal that you want them to move a certain way. You want them to do a task. Well, this is how you'll start it. You're going to differentiate what they're doing, kind of notice it, start moving like it, link it together, and then you're going to narrate. You're going to say something about what you're seeing. Maybe some of you are swaying. Maybe you're saying, oh, I feel like a sense of ease. Maybe if those of you are holding tension, you might say, oh, I feel the tension in my neck, or something's happening. If you were with your child and there was a struggle or a fight, you might notice that, oh, I'm noticing there's like some force being used. I'm noticing we're moving direct towards something. And what we're doing, the N is for narrating. And you're just saying it in words. You're saying what you see. Sometimes with, not to stereotype, but it works really well. Sometimes with dads, I notice for them, it's really fun to be the NASCAR race announcer or the newscaster. So you're just narrating what you see. This plays into Carol Dweck's work with mindset, really thinking about growth mindset as like you're just narrating what you see versus saying good or bad. You're just saying what is.
Sorry, Lori, could you repeat his name?
Carol Dweck.
Carol Dweck.
Thank you. Is the mindset research about fixed and growth mindset. So narrating is something very known in the therapy world, developmental world with children. We narrate a lot. But narrating doesn't have to be an assumption. It could just be where you're just saying what you see, what exactly is visual to you. Yeah. And that's movement. Then the C is for consciousness. So you're bringing to consciousness for the child the choices they're making in the body, or the consciousness, again, if you're talking about your parent, yourself, consciousness of you. Am I consciously holding my shoulders too high that I feel tense? Am I consciously allowing myself to relax? Am I making a face of tension when I'm trying to engage my child, where maybe I should soften my face and let go? So whatever has been narrated, you're bringing it to consciousness, and so that you have the ability to have more information. And last but not least, the E is for engagement. So engagement is now you've got this movement happening, yeah? So you've started with these individual movements, you've linked them together, you've narrated them, and you've brought them to consciousness. Maybe there's a theme. This reminds me of when we were playing the other day, or this reminds me of when I was growing up and we used to fight all the time, and I'm not wanting a fight in this house anymore. So let's stop fighting. And you've got this engagement. You've got this, the E is for engagement. You've got this immediate ability to engage, and it comes starting from the body. So that dance, to me, is like this whole beautiful picture. It fits with neuroscience, with what we know about physics and the body for wellness, and it absolutely should fit for a relationship. So I know that's really fast, and we've covered a lot today. But if anything, and I know I'll save my tip for a moment, but I just hope that this brings a new lens to how you're engaging with your child and within yourself.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So if we just take 2 minutes before the end to be able to take any, really urgent questions that people might be wanting to ask Lori. I see that there was the one from Lise about having a fight with her son before the call, and how to incorporate the team thing that you were talking about in the experience. Sure. Is that something that you can talk to briefly, Lori?
Yes. I would just say, similar to this plan of the team, is just to see how you can look from a body place. Maybe you're not using words, but just to actually get your body physically in line with your child. So if he was moving faster in that instance, could you speed up your voice? Could you move fast? If he was sitting, could you be sitting too? So really thinking about your body in terms of movement. And then once you're on the same movement plane as him, that may allow you to have some more communication of like resolving it with him. But first we want to get out of that stress response place, and that comes with the body. I'm also hearing this message of like where I can read more, learn more. To be honest, I would love for you to come. I do write monthly blogs that describe about these moving moments with individual children. None of it is, it's all been changed and modified, so it's no confidential information. But it really gives you more insight into what this looks like, as well as articles that I post if you follow me on Facebook. Because this movement work is really a collaboration of what I've kind of taken from these two worlds of psychology and dance movement therapy and put together in terms of working with children. But I know that they follow all the parenting books, of kind of that peaceful parenting approach, or I'm a big advocate of Mona Delahook's work. She has a new book coming out, or Dr. Daniel Siegel, Tina Bryson, all the attachment theory piece. And I'm just adding additionally this idea of the body. So please reach out to me anytime for more information about how does the movement piece work.
Thank you. So any final questions, any final comments that you would like to share with Dr. Lori before I go into a little bit of housekeeping, and then we'll come back for the last minute to ask for your top parenting tip to share with us. So Ray mentioned about reminding her of mirroring.
Yeah, and the exciting thing, I'll just say, dance movement therapy does take it another step forward. Mirroring is a wonderful place to start. We also want to look at amplifying. So dance movement therapy works on amplifying. So taking something that you're doing the same as and making it bigger. So it really brings the child out. It kind of gets their gleam in the eye, or minimizing it. So maybe your child's moving in a certain way and you're softening it. You're getting smaller with it. You're a little bit more subtle. And so there's variations in movements. It's not just that copycatting the sameness. Oftentimes I've seen clinicians in training and they'll just follow the child, like move the same exact way. And there's no dance, it more looks like synchronized. And we do want to differentiate. That's when differentiation happens, is when learning happens. So there has to be some shift that allows a child to go, oh, there's a separateness here and I'm having a relationship. That mom is not me and I'm not mom. We have two different feelings. So I won't go on too much, but no. Please email me more. I want to talk more.
We'll have to get you back on again very soon on another session. So thank you everybody for joining us. I hope you're going to stay on, because we've got our panel discussion, and Dr. Lori will also be joining us for the discussion as well. We'll be looking at why does the body matter in parenting? Why should we bother? Why should we care? What difference does it make? Why is it valuable? So that is going to be at 9 o'clock UK time, so half an hour. So hopefully you've got the energy to be able to stay up and join us with that. And today's calls, if you haven't been able to make them, they will be posted. There'll be a Dropbox link that will be posted onto the resources page. So you'll be able to have a chance to be able to look at those at your leisure. And coming up tomorrow, we have another busy day's schedule for you. At 7 o'clock, Jane is going to be joining us to look at simple practices for self-care. Roman Norris will be exploring listening partnerships. Susan Bauer, who we're going to have on the panel with us soon. Susan is the author of The Embodied Teen, so she'll be exploring how body intelligence can help teens and ourselves to be able to discover the inner resilience that we need to thrive. And in the 9 o'clock session, we have Anna Cole, who will be talking about setting loving limits and play listening and working with unworkable behaviours. And so I'm sure there's a few of us that are going to be having quite a lot of questions for Anna. So thank you very much for sharing your wisdom and your experience with us, Lori. Is there one top embodied parenting tip that you would like to share?
Yeah, I was going to leave you all with, it's not personal, it's movement. So really start to pay attention to those triggers when you're having them in a body sensation. So notice where in your body you feel this feeling that gets charged inside of you when you're interacting with kids. What temperature is it? What's the texture? How does it move? What color is it? Really kind of identify what it is. And then you either lean in and keep it, or you can change it. But change it from a physical place or sensation place versus kind of a thinking place where you're telling yourself and kind of beating yourself up of like, oh, I should have felt this, or I should act like this. Really, really see it on the body level. Then you're aware of triggers mentally, but actually do something to lean in. You'll feel more in control and more appreciate your acceptance to learn and connect.
Thank you. And I know that we've got a copy of that written down as well, so I'll share that on the Facebook group for everybody.
Thank you.
So thank you. Thank you. That was wonderful. So much information on there. And also on the resources page is the links to your membership programs as well. So we'll be able to direct everybody to those as well. So everybody that's joining us here tonight, you do have a chance, obviously if you want to go and get a drink, go to the toilet, be able to take care, as we were talking about this morning, taking care of those simple biological impulses, to be able to support that regulation as you go through the day. That's really, really important. But you do have the chance for, up to sort of 10-15 minutes to be able to stay on this call, to be able to have a chat together in a kind of cafe room. So you're quite welcome to join that. And also, Lori, if you want to stay with us, that's good too. So I'm going to stop the recording. So if there is anything that anyone wants to discuss, maybe that's a little bit more, sort of personal, a little bit more difficult, then this might be the chance to do that. So,
I
okay,
just
so
I wanted to say I hope you feel better to the one that has, I won't say names on here, but that has a fever. I hope you're taking care of yourself for being with me.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording. So thank you, everybody, and see you again soon.